Everybody get a tithe envelope out. You're going to need it. I know you know what the topic is because we even sang a song about it. So, how many people got a paycheck this week? Well, I know some people get one once a month, right? Well, I'm asking you just to take that check and give it to the right owner. Put it in the envelope. What do you think about that?
That's a lot of money.
Would you like to do that today? I mean, you can, but I'm not going to make you do it because God doesn't ask you for 100%, does He?
No, it doesn't.
But whose money is it?
God.
Who do you belong to?
God.
So who should get the money? God. But we're going to take a dive into tithing. Just to refresh everybody's brains a little bit, the Adventist Church has their system of giving. Tithing, if you look at there, it says 10%. Why does it say 10%? Because that's what tithing means, or tithe, 10%. Who gets that 10%? When you put it in the tithe envelope, where does it go to? Conference? Why? Does every church do that? Well, maybe in the Adventist church. Other churches do not do that. So why in the world does the Adventist church do it? We're not going to answer the question today. But 10% tithe. I've had many people say, I give you my tithe and offerings. Why do you have plenty of money to take the bills? Because 100% of the tithe goes straight out of our church into the conference, Georgia Cumberland Conference office. And you can go on their website and they'll tell you what they do with it. You know, they have to tithe the tithe to the next step up the level. You know, and so it's a whole different ball game. But the next section on the tithe envelope is called local church mission. All those little funds there, where do they stay at? Here. Local church. So if you give something in that section there, all that money will stay within our church, and we decide as a church what to do with those funds. Church budget being the biggest one, or should be. If you give to something other than church budget, guess what you've done with that money? You've conscripted it to that fund. Means as a church, we cannot touch that money except for what that was given to. So I've had to turn tithe envelopes back to people and say, we do not have a fund for what you're trying to give to. And they get upset. I want it to be a gift. It's for the church. I says, then put it where it needs to be. In a gift, where do you put it? There's got to be some kind of offering you got to place it in. Where's the best gift for the local church? Church budget. Because church budget funds then can be budgeted to do the work of the church. If you say, I'm going to give it to this fund like women's ministries, guess what that money has to be spent? On women's ministries. Wonder if there's an electric bill to pay. We want to pay the women. We want women to have fun, don't we? And have a ministry and do things. But the lights are going to go off because you cannot spend that money to pay the light bill. Even though we do. Because we write a check out of the checkbook and it pays the bills, right? But it might be dipping into some fund we're not supposed to be touching. That's called fraud. So church budget, I just say, give church budget. Let the church decide how to fund and use it and we can put it in women's ministry, but we can take it back from women's ministry because it was church budget funds. But if it's specified for a specific fund, say women's ministry or vacation Bible school or whatever, it has to be used for that purpose. Just like the conference money they sent us, $4,300 we got for evangelism. Where do we have to spend that money? Evangelism. We have to give an account for it. That's the next section of offerings, the conference. The conference does not pay the conference light bill out of tithe. So they need some funds to pay the conference light bill, right? That's out of the conference ministry offering. And there's other listed in there you can give to. There's probably 500 different funds you can give to if you want to go look them all up and give to them all. But the best way to do it for the conference is to give it to conference ministries. They can then use it wherever it needs to be used. The last section there is called World Mission, World Budget. That goes to the World Church. It makes its way up through our conference all the way to the World Church. And then it's distributed wherever they're going to use it at. There's probably 1,000 different funds the General Conference has to send money to or pay things to. So if you put it on World Budget, it'll get sent there. Sabbath School Missions, all that money goes on up to the World Church. That's part of the World Budget offering. So when you put money into the envelope, that's blue, I think it is, maybe yellow, I don't know what color it is now. That Sabbath School Mission offering, inside there's a little blue envelope that you put for local Sabbath School expense. Local Sabbath School expense is a part of our church budget funding. But we put it into a special fund and call it Sabbath School because we spend probably $300-400 a month on papers, quarterlies and those kind of things, or quarterly, once a quarter. So just wanted you to understand, tithe goes straight out of our checkbook right into the conference funds and it's passed on. We don't have any of that there. But today we're going to talk about tithe. You know, I have questions. And so I thought, what are we going to do? So we're going to do a Bible study. And y'all going to tell me why we do what we do. Okay? We're going to do this study together. And you all know this stuff, I believe, or at least if you didn't, we're going to kind of gel a little bit. So who owns everything?
God does.
Here's some text to prove who owns it. Psalms 24:1 says, "The earth is the Lord's, and the fullness thereof, the world, and they that dwell therein." What does that leave out? If you're dwelling on this land and this planet, the earth, then who do you belong to? It says the Lord. 1 Corinthians 10:26 says, "For the earth is the Lord's and the fullness thereof." I think he's quoting Psalm. Leviticus 25:23, "The land, moreover, shall not be sold permanently, for the land is mine." Capital M. Yeah. "For you are but aliens and sojourners with me." Now, I know some of y'all have property, right? Is it yours? No. Well, but your name's on the deed, right? At least as far as the American government's concerned. But can the government take your property from you? If they want it, they can take it, pretty much. You got to have a good reason, but they want to put a road through your property, right? Or they want to do something else there that's going to be for the benefit of everybody. They're going to come after it. That's the law of the land. Psalms 50, verse 10, it says, "For every beast of the forest is mine, and the cattle upon 1,000 hills." So all the animals, God owns them. Yeah, we think we should eat them. Right? He says we can on some of them. Psalms 104:24, it says, "O Lord, how manifold are thy works. In wisdom hast thou made them all. The earth is full of thy riches." Ezekiel 18:4, "Behold, all souls are mine. As the soul of the Father, so also the soul of the Son is mine. The soul that sinneth, it shall die." So we see from these texts that God owns everything. And we also know, we're not going to look at that today, but he even redeemed us back again, right? So he doubly owns us. So should we not be paying maybe 20%? What does God really require of us? Yes. In order for us to have blessings, we have some responsibilities. Here Joshua 1:3 says, "Every place that the sole of your foot shall tread upon, that have I given unto you, as I said unto Moses." This is to the children of Israel, right? They're entering the promised land, and wherever they step is going to be their property. And they're still fighting over it today, aren't they? There's a war going on, because whose property is it? They forgot it's not theirs, right? They forgot it's God's. And we're squabbling over it. John 12:26, "If any man serve me, let him follow me, and where I am, there shall also my servant be. If any man serve me, him will my Father honor." John 14, 1-3, y'all know that text, right? Let not your heart be troubled. You believe in God, believe also in me. My Father's house there are many mansions. If it were not so, I would have told you. I go and prepare a place for you. And if I go and prepare a place for you, I will come again and receive you unto myself, that where I am, there you may be also. He has blessings he wants to share with us, but he does require something in return. We talked about that in the lesson a little bit today. You know, who leaves God? We do. And here's our text that was read. Do you know that in Bible times, the temple system went into disrepair? Y'all know that? Multiple times, the temple system. Why did the temple system go into disrepair?
People using the money for other things.
They weren't paying their tithe. They weren't taking it to the temple. And so the priest had nothing to do. They just had to shut the temple down. And that's why God says here, why are you robbing me for? You're not giving your honest tithe to me. And so you're cursed. And they would go into slavery. And then they would go, oh, this is awful. Just like the prodigal son, right? I'm going to eat pig food. It's better to go be with my father, right? As a slave. So if you were going to go study about tithe, what would you do? How would you start? How would you start a Bible study? Well, the word tithe, right? If you look up that word in an online Bible, or you can do it in a concordance if you want, and look every text up, what would you find? There's 5 Greek and Hebrew words for tithe in the Bible. They're all up on the screen here. I don't know how big it is. Can you see it pretty good? But that's pretty good. 2 Hebrew words and 3 Greek words. So on the left is the Hebrew, and we're going to break it down into 2 different ones to get a little bit more look at it here. So if you have a Bible app that can do this, it's nice. I like the Bible app that lets me look at the Greek word because it helps you to understand the meaning a little bit more sometimes. And can make you have lots more questions too. But so here's the Hebrew, 2 Hebrew words that reference 8 different ways they translate it. If you see there on the top, it says H46, 43, that's the Hebrew word, one of the words, and the other one's H62, 37, and it tells you what it is. And then underneath it, I've kind of underlined it and drawn some lines to it. AV, Authorized Version, 32 times this is how it's translated in the Old Testament. And it breaks it down there for you. Tithe 27 times, a tenth part 2 times, a tenth 2 times, and tithing 1 time. And I just combine those together between the 2 different words here. And there's 41 times in the Old Testament that these 2 words are quoted. Now, do you think there's 41 texts? There's not 41 texts, because the word is sometimes more than once in that text. But we're going to look at each one of those words. And you can see I listed them over there, 1 to 8. The most translated time, the way it's translated is tithe. It's 31 times out of the 41 that these 2 words are translated as tithe in our English version, King James Version of the Bible, the Authorized King James. And you see 10th part, 10th, tithing, take a tenth, give a tenth, surely and truly. Ever would think that the tithe would be translated with those words? Let's look at the New Testament. 3 words, but only 10 times used of those 3 words in the New Testament. Does that mean there's only 10 times in the New Testament we no longer have to pay tithe? Some people say that, because tithing is not really taught that much in the New Testament. Most of these times that it's talked about is really referring back to the Old Testament, because Jesus was here and he was speaking. So there's the breakdown. So what can we learn from these words? One thing we learn is that tithe is 10%, right? It's pretty clear here, 10th part, a tenth, and that we're supposed to do something with it. We're supposed to pay it. We're supposed to give it. We're supposed to take it. We're supposed to receive it. What does all that mean? There's 41 times in the Old Testament that the tithe word is used, and 10 times in the New Testament. So let's look at some of these texts. When's the first time tithe is mentioned in the Bible? Do it? What is it referencing to? Okay, yep. It's not Leviticus, but it's going to be there. But the first time it's mentioned is in Genesis chapter 14. And it's interesting because this is the only time, and this is long before Israelites ever came on the scene, right? A whole different system is talked about here. Only this text talks about it. Because the Levites weren't even in existence at this point. So who's getting the tithe? You know, this is Abraham getting tithe. But where does he get this money from to give as tithe? Remember the story? Abraham gave Melchizedek, king of Salem, a tithe. Because he went and rescued his son, or his nephew Lot, and the whole city of Sodom, who had been taken captive, and he got all their stuff back. And he gave a tithe of all those possessions. Why would Abraham give a tithe of something that wasn't his? Okay, so technically it was his, right? Okay. He got all these possessions because he went and fought a battle and won all those possessions. Just like the other king had come and stole them all from Sodom and said, they're mine now and I'm taking them with me. Abraham goes and gets them back and he gives a tithe. Does that tell you anything about tithing? Do you just tithe your paycheck? What do you do about maybe some other things that you get? I'm just talking here now, okay? I don't have answers for you. But a Canaanite city was taken captive, and Abraham took a tithe of all those things he got and gave them to the king of Salem, the king of peace, Jerusalem. You ever heard of that word before? That's where Jerusalem comes from. Where did Melchizedek come from? Did he have some parents? Did he have a lineage? Nope. He just shows up out of nowhere. And he's not just only a priest, he's also a king. Mm-hmm. What is that telling us? This is setting us up for the whole story of the Bible, right? Who else is a king and a priest? Jesus, right? He's a precursor to Jesus. He comes from out of nowhere, and he disappears into nowhere, in a sense. We don't know where he's at and coming from. But he gets the tithe that Abraham recovered, all this stuff. And, of course, we know Abraham says, nope, I'm not taking anything of yours. Well, he took a tenth, but it wasn't for him, and gave it as a tithe. Because he won the battle and got the stuff back. One of our first texts to look at is, like he said, was Leviticus, chapter 27, verses 30 and 32. It says, I went and took the liberty for myself is to put the Hebrew words where they are, because guess what? Sometimes they use the two different words in the same verse. Just so we can follow that. That's what the H4643 is telling you, which actual translation and which Greek or Hebrew word we're looking at. It says, and all the tithe of the land, whether of the seed of the land or the fruit of the tree, is the Lord's. It is holy unto the Lord. So seed of the land and fruit of the tree is holy to the Lord. And if a man will at all redeem of his tithes. So you can redeem your tithe? What does redeem mean? I can get it back, right? You can redeem your tithe. Well, so do you redeem your tithe today? Let's go on. He shall add, therefore, the fifth part. So if you want to redeem it, you can get it back, but you got to give something more for it. So if you give 10%, it's supposed to be 10%, you got to add a fifth to it. So again, a half more. So if you want, why would somebody want to redeem their tithe? Get y'all thinking. Let's read on. You'll get it, I think, here. And concerning the tithe of the herd or the flock, even of whatsoever passeth under the rod, the 10th part shall be holy unto the Lord. If you're a herdsman and you raise cattle or you raise sheep or you raise whatever it is, and the 10th one walks under the rod, whose does it belong to? It's God's. But wonder if I want that cow to raise some more calves. I can give a fifth part and actually get it back. Cost me a little bit more money though, right? Not only have to give a cow for a cow, but I have to give a fifth of another cow too. Okay? Wonder if there's only 12 animals, and what are you going to do with the 2 that walk under the rod afterward? It says every 10th. We won't go there because we're going to cut the cow into 10 pieces and to give 2 parts of it away, it wouldn't be no cow anymore, right? It says every 10th. But we don't pay tithes and offerings in cows and sheep and flocks and herds anymore. But that's the tithing system back then because of the animals.
We give a tenth of the value.
We give a value, that's correct. Numbers 18, and we got 3 texts here. It says, but the tithes of the children of Israel, which they offer as a heave offering, I kind of highlight it because what is a heave offering? Unto the Lord, I have given to the Levites to inherit. So who's supposed to get the tithe that God says is his? The Levites are to inherit it. Therefore I have said unto them, among the children of Israel they have no inheritance. Thus speak unto the Levites and say unto them, when you take of the children of Israel the tithes, which I have given you from them for your inheritance, then ye shall offer up a heave offering unto the Lord, even a 10th part of the tithe. Thus ye also shall offer an heave offering unto the Lord of all your tithes. So a 10th of what they get given gets offered up to the Lord as a heave offering. And I just took the Greek word here, heave, and circled over there to the right to let you all maybe look at that if you want to. But it's basically saying a contribution, an offering, a heave offering, any offering, an offering to God, either grain or money or whatever, a contribution as a heave offering. I thought, am I heaving it away or throwing it somewhere? But technically, they're tithing the tithe they're given, and it's actually sacrificed on the altar. Thus you shall offer heave offering unto the Lord of all your tithes, which you receive of the children of Israel, and you shall give, therefore, the Lord's heave offering to Aaron the priest. So the priests gave 10% of what they got to Aaron. What do you think Aaron did with all that? Just sit back and enjoy it, right? What did it take to keep the sanctuary system running? Lots of animals, right? They had to sacrifice a morning and evening sacrifice every day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. That's a lot of animals. And then if you look at the Bible, you wonder, 120,000 cows being sacrificed today for offerings. They had to hire more priests to come and get cleansed and do all these sacrificing. And I thought, wow, how much wood does it take to burn an animal? You know, I don't know how it all happened back then, but when you try to burn a wet animal, it takes a lot of wood. So what we learn from here is that the tithes, at least what I can see it says here, if you can disagree with me, where does the tithe go? The children of Israel, the 12 tribes, less the Levites, because Manasseh and the two sons of Joseph inherited the two parts, so there's still 12 tribes, all gave a tithe of their seed, their fruit of the vine or the tree, all their livestock, the 10th part that went under the rod. And they gave it to the Lord in the form of the Levites, who were appointed to minister in the sanctuary for God. That's what I kind of see here.
That's how the priests were paid.
That's how the priests got their food to eat and their stuff to do the sanctuary service. And that's why the service was in disrepair, because they weren't giving their tithes, and they were robbing God at the time of this. Many times the sanctuary was left desolate. Deuteronomy 12:6-11 says, "And thither ye shall bring your burnt offerings, your sacrifices, and your tithes." So not only tithes, we have other offerings here. What's a burnt offering? We're not looking at all that today, but in your sacrifices. You know, the children of Israel, when you sin, what did you have to do? Bring a lamb to the temple, cut its throat, and sacrifice it for your chance to have forgiveness, right? As a symbolism, all of Jesus and what he had to do for us. So bring your sacrifices, your heave offerings of your hand, and your vows, and your freewill offerings, and your firstlings of your herds and of your flocks. Then there shall be a place which the Lord your God shall choose to cause his name to dwell there. Thither shall ye bring all that I command you. Your burnt offerings, your sacrifices, your tithes, heave offerings of your hand, and all your choice vows which ye vow unto the Lord. So where is the place God chose for this to take place? I'm not going to go into that text-wise, but this was Jerusalem, right? God chose Jerusalem at some point to become the place where everybody brought their tithes and offerings when they were supposed to do that. But we know they didn't always do that because they didn't want to take them there. When the tribes split up, they didn't want to lose all those offerings, so they kind of separated the two places against God's wishes. Deuteronomy 26:12 says, "When thou hast made an end of tithing, all the tithes of thine increase the third year, which is the year of tithing." Now, I'm still wrestling with this one. Maybe somebody has some information on what does it mean, the third year. That's why I wrote myself a note there. Need to look more at the third year tithing system. I don't find a whole lot in the Bible that talks about this. But it makes sense when we have a 7-year cycle, right? And we have a 7 of 7 years. So every 49 years, there was a year of Jubilee, which was an extra whole year off, in a sense. Every 7 years, what was the Jews supposed to do? What the 7th year? Rest. Don't plant anything, don't harvest anything, let the land rest. And many times they didn't do that, and so they went into captivity. God says, you're going to be in captivity for this many years because you've not let the land rest. It means we're not paying tithe right, we're not giving the Lord what we're supposed to do. And so they went into captivity. So when thou hast made an end of tithing, all the tithes of thine increase the third year. So how does that mean? And the third year is a different system set up here, which is the year of tithing, and hast given it unto the Levite, the stranger, the fatherless, and the widow, that they may eat within thy gates and be filled. So not only did the Levites get it, strangers, fatherless, widows, all could get some of this food or to help them along the way. And our time is almost gone already, right? So we're going to try to wrap this up. We'll have to cook this up another time down the road somewhere, since we're not going to be here next week. What's the book of Hezekiah all about? Well, Malachi too, but we're talking about Hezekiah. We got Hezekiah. Well, no, I'm sorry, not the book of Hezekiah, but Hezekiah here. But Nehemiah and Malachi both are, we're going to look at, we'll save them for next time, I guess. But why are those two books in the Bible? Because, I'm just going to give you a summary. Because Israel had fallen into disrepair. They were in captivity because they hadn't been doing what God asked them to do. And now they came back and they're setting the temple service back up again because it's not been operating. But Hezekiah was a good king. And the sanctuary had been shut down for some reason. Don't know, but they're here starting the service back up again. King Hezekiah reinstitutes the service. And it says here in 2 Chronicles, and brought in the offerings and tithes and the dedicated things faithfully, over which Coniah the Levite was ruler and Shimei his brother was next. What is that talking about? There's a system for distributing the tithes that were given to the sanctuary. And they appointed this guy, Levite, Coniah, to be in charge of all that. How many people do you think it took to keep up with all the tithes? When you have 12 tribes and how many 100,000 people there bringing in offerings. At times they got so much they had to say, quit bringing this stuff. We can't handle it all, right? We can't process it fast enough. And they didn't do it in dollar bills and have a bank account and do electronic transfers. They had all these livestock coming that they had to all deal with, right? So it took a lot of people to maintain that tithe system. And they all got money for doing so, right? Or they got livestock or animals and whatever as part of the system. That's the 10% that went to the Levites. So we know today, I know that tithe is 10%. And what am I supposed to give today? Because I don't have cows and sheep and goats and chickens and all that stuff to tithe. Now, maybe some of you all do. Do you tithe your chickens? Every time you have a chicken born, do you say, number 10, yep, this goes to the offering plate? Does anybody do that? I won't take it because it doesn't fit in the bank account very nice. And I don't want to have to manage all those animals, right? But you can sell the animal and turn it into cash, and then that's how we do today, right? And they even did that in their days, too. We can't take all these animals to the temple, so we'll just check it in the cash, and we'll take the money up there. And then we can buy back what we need to give to them. So we know it's seed and fruit of the trees. We know it's all the kinds of livestock that go under the rod. And it's interesting. We look at that word rod. Where do you hear that word rod? Rod and staff, they comfort me. How does a rod and staff comfort you? One rod is to beat things up with. The other one is to bring things, pick them up, like a staff to keep you from falling or help you stand up. It goes under the rod. It becomes the Lord's, every 10th one. So if you'd like to do your own study, you can go online to a Bible app and just search, and you can actually find free apps there that'll even give you the Hebrew and the Greek if you want to look this stuff up yourself. I'm just trying to understand, why did the church set up tithing the way it did? Why did our church decide that? Is it the right way to do it? Or why come the other churches don't do it? Which is the right way? Is there one right way, or is there multiple right ways? So we're gonna continue this. It'll probably be maybe a couple months away. So we have to refresh ourselves so we can get through all these texts. And the New Testament doesn't talk about tithing, except in Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. But Jesus is only confronting the priests and the Pharisees about their tithing system back then. And it's not about, could I continue it? So why would we continue it? So we're going to stop here because I know people are hungry, right? Came a long way. You want to get some of this food that we can eat. That's another interesting thing I saw in this tithing system is I can take my tithes to Jerusalem and I can eat them.
Right.
I didn't say that. It just says you can do whatever your heart desires. You can eat whatever you want of your tithes in the place that God says I can do it. Not at my own house, but in His place, so I can go have a party with the tithes. Okay. Our closing song today, I gave my life for thee. Who owns the tithe? Who owns your money? Who owns you? If we get that right, then we don't have to worry about anything anymore, right? We don't have to worry if it gets stolen. We don't have to worry what the priests do with it. We don't have to worry nothing because it's not mine anyway, right? Just stick it in the envelope and give it to Keith after church. Okay.
You have been watching the Ogden Road Seventh-day Adventist Church. We hope you enjoyed this presentation.